Welcome back to the Fuel Your Legacy podcast. Each week, we expose the faulty foundational mindsets of the past and rebuild a newer, stronger foundation essential in creating your meaningful legacy. We've got a lot of work to do, so let's get started. As much as you like this podcast, I'm certain that you're going to love the book that I just released on Amazon, Fuel Your Legacy, The 9 Pillars to Build a Meaningful Legacy. I wrote this to share with you the experiences that I had while I was identifying my identity, how I began to create my meaningful legacy, and how you can create yours. You're going to find this book on Kindle, Amazon, and as always on my website, samknickerbocker.com. Welcome back to the Fuel Your Legacy show. And today we have another local on. And the reason it's going to be interesting, the reason I brought him on and asked him, reached out to him, is because I think in the world we're living in today, we need to talk to more people who are willing to speak out and willing to just say how they feel without judgment of necessarily others or judgment of themselves, and not accepting that judgment. So there's a few different things I'll talk about on his social media that's stuck out to me. But his name's Toph Pace. If you want to follow him, I don't know. I follow you on Facebook. Are you on Instagram?
Yeah, I'm on Facebook and Instagram. That's it. I had a Parler account, but then
that got shut down fast.
That whole thing went down. But I've never really, I have a love-hate with social media, but Facebook, I've kind of figured out how Facebook works a little bit more so than Instagram, as far as like reaching people and like just engaging and like getting to know people. I use it to connect and network and, for my podcast. So yeah, both those platforms, they're pretty similar. I kind of share the same stuff, but I'll write out more blog stuff on Facebook because I like to write. So
yeah, everybody has their different skills. I am not a writer. This is why I do podcasting. It's just like, you gotta have to do something, have a blog or something. I'm like, my writing ability is so poor that I can speak. I'm not saying my speaking ability is great either, but at least the grammar is different. I understand a little bit better.
And it's interesting you say that, because I feel like, coming from my background, I was a shy, quiet kid. But as I have gotten older and I started feeling, for whatever reason, to start sharing kind of my story on Facebook, maybe it's more so trying to process. I was going through I'd gone through a divorce, and I'm trying to like navigate that whole thing, and I was questioning religion, society's belief systems, like all these different belief systems. And so writing kind of was therapeutic in a way to like organize my thoughts and process like what I was learning, because I'm diving into, you can call it the rabbit holes of, different questions regarding religion. Like, is God real? Like, is there really a God? Like, how do I know? Like, what if I don't want to believe in God? How do I believe in something else and still be a good person? Because I feel like I need to have morals and have integrity and character, but at the same time, like, what is that? Like, there's so many things within religion where it's just like, so I'm just writing my thoughts out, and it helped me kind of process all the new information that's coming in. And it was kind of like I was reprogramming my mind in a way. I had all these glitches, and I realized like, oh, maybe we just need to like completely get rid of all the beliefs. Don't be married to any of your beliefs, and be open to anything to come in and then decide, does this work for me or does it not? Because if it doesn't work for me, then it's not serving me. But if this belief system is working for me and it's helping me with whatever I'm trying to do in life. And so that's kind of in my process. And now I've never felt like I was a good communicator, a good speaker. And so it was like stretching myself with my podcast. And it took me being a guest. So I was a guest on 2 podcasts earlier, I guess later in 2020. So around September, October.
This is after you'd already had quite a bit of outspokenness.
Yeah.
And that's like you cleaned off your Facebook profile. I was like scrolling there. I was like, did he delete posts? I don't know if maybe Facebook deleted, maybe not. I don't know.
No, I mean, well, a lot of my posts, are just like a blog entry, so there's no pictures. So to go back, you've got to scroll through.
That makes sense. Yeah, because one of the things so what's interesting about 2020 was how many people in the community, and I don't know if they're all over the country. Just like with a lot of things, and I feel like maybe it's just because you're a bubble, but a lot of things do start in Utah.
Yeah,
a lot of type of. You have the MLM world, you have the networking world. Tons of entrepreneurs and businesses start in Utah. Lots of musicians start in Utah. So it's not that they don't happen other places, but there was a lot of the pro-Trump demographic leadership, at least that I saw, and maybe this is just because, again, where I'm at, that was in Utah. And what I found, well, one, I'm more of a pacifist. Truth be told, I'm a pacifist. My wife doesn't like it, but I wasn't super outspoken about like, oh, Trump is one way or the other. I have my own personal beliefs, but I haven't been super outspoken about it. So then I see these few people rising to the top of the conversation, and a lot of times it's not necessarily putting out a specific opinion. In your case, I would say it was less about you putting out, this is what I believe and everybody's dumb for not believing me. There was definitely those people in the Trump world, but more just asking questions like, okay, what's up with this? What's up with this?
I'm glad
what's up with that, right?
That you observed that, because that's my approach.
Yeah. So
my approach is to ask questions, question everything. And then that allows you to critically think, like take we could throw out masks, for example, because I'm wearing this mask. Sure. Yeah. Now, somebody mandates a mask. Our governor mandated a mask, statewide at one point for all the kids at school. And it's like, I want to ask why. Like, why is this happening? I can see how the mask can be beneficial. I mean, there are times when it's appropriate. If I'm at the dentist office and somebody's leaning over my face,
that's not new though.
Them having a mask on I'm like, okay, I like that because, I don't want their saliva in my mouth, or I'm sure they don't want to exchange it either. So, there are settings where it's like, okay, a mask is appropriate, but I go into a grocery store, or I guess I should go with a restaurant, because that's the biggest one, right? That one doesn't make any sense to me. I can go into this restaurant, right, and sit down and eat, but they would prefer that you have the mask on. They ask that you put the mask on while you enter. And then I'm like, but wait, we're sitting down in this group and there's, I go with coworkers on Fridays a lot, and we're talking and we're eating, and it's like, we're spreading all the COVID, if we have it or whatever. Right. And so it's like, it just, the logic behind it. And so that's why I just ask the questions. It's not that don't think somebody should wear a mask. If that's what you want to do, then that's your choice. But I should be able to make that choice also based on the questions I ask and the answers I get and what I feel is best for me, right? Like being told what to do for whatever reason, I get resistant. It's like, don't tell me what to do.
So when do you think that resistance started in your life? Like how young were you when you decided, you know what? Because
I would say as a teenager, it started to become resistant as a teenager, because I just kind of did what I was told as a child. I was very shy, timid. I avoided conflict. I was very passive. I've been very passive up until the last few years of my life.
Would you say that was an innate thing, or something that in your family conflict was shamed or looked down upon, and so to maintain status quo, there was no conflict inside, there was no conflict outside, you just didn't care?
I think it was just, I didn't when I saw conflict, whether it was in my home or in whatever setting, I didn't like this feeling of it was kind of scary as a child. Like if you hear somebody yelling or getting upset, I was really not, just for whatever reason, I think that might be something, but just, I don't know. It really, I've looked back on my childhood, because that's kind of what I'm going through right now, is healing my inner child, recognizing we all have trauma, right? We all experience something, some event or multiple events. Obviously there's that one event, but then it multiplies as you grow through life. And so we developed triggers, right? So my triggers really showed up when I got married. I hid a lot of stuff because I wasn't conscious. There was a lot of subconscious things going on. And so I get married and I'm like triggered by all these things and I don't really understand why. It's like, now that I've been speaking, I've been speaking with a lot of women that are healers. And I've been introduced to the idea of triggers and trauma and like healing, all of that, but I don't think I really ever understood how to do it. And now that I'm really like focused on like, this was the trauma, these are my triggers, and I have a shadow side. So I have this person that, for whatever reason, when I get triggered, this Hulk. That's why I call my shadow side the Hulk. And it's interesting. I had a friend on the other day on my podcast, and there was a psychedelic incident that I had with him where he thought he said, "You look green." Like he was like, "You literally look green." I was like, because I kind of like went into that persona, right? But there's also this persona that's like more of a Christ-like, good, kind hearted, like, and that's the person that I like and that I want to be. But I know I have this shadow side, and before I've gone through all this, kind of bouncing all over, trying to give some backstory, but like I grew up in this religion too. And so sinning was just like, you kind of have to hide your sins, right? You don't want anybody to know about your deep, dark secrets or what you've done wrong, like your thoughts, like, you have these thoughts, and like growing up in, the religious culture.
Do you feel like, because I'm LDS, I'm Mormon as well, but do you feel like that's a cultural phenomenon, or is that more like, from your perspective, is that a cultural phenomenon, or is that a doctrinal, like, you feel like it's built
I think it's more cultural, but I think it intertwines with some of the doctrine, but I think it really is more of a cultural thing. And I think it just, maybe it affects other people different than others. Like for me, for whatever reason, maybe it's because I have perfectionism traits, some OCD traits, maybe I feel like I have to be like super perfect because they're asking me to do all these things. And it feels like to me like it's black and white in some aspects, but then they kind of like make it gray areas. But it just seems, for me, it's a conflict, because it's like, that kind of fucks with my head. Like when you're like telling me like, well, you can't drink coffee, right? Well, why? Why can't I drink coffee? Well, just because you can't. Like, well, what about this energy drink? Well, I mean, I don't know. That's probably not the best thing for you either. Well, what about this and what about that? So it's just like, when it gets specific like that, it's just like, it doesn't make sense to me. It's like I don't really, that just, it's hard for me to process in my head, because I just have to analyze it and be like, ask the questions like, why? And if there's not a clear, concise response to really sell me on the reason why. So like, they haven't been able to sell me on this. And this seems very minor and simple, right? Masks, it's not, most people make the argument, it's not that big of a deal. It's just a mask. It's just coffee. It's not that big of a deal. Just don't drink it, or do drink it, whatever. But for me, these simple things they can become very complex in the big scheme of things, because it's like, where does it end? How many things are you told this is what you should do and should not do? And does it does. So I'm somebody who chooses to continue to subscribe to the narrative, and others aren't. And I have half my family who does not subscribe to the narrative, and I have myself who does. But I wonder, because we have these things. I'm a very principle-based person, or I do my best to be, right? I'm not perfect. Anybody who is, great for you, but for me, not perfect. And so I do my best. So if I can see how this principle applies everywhere, then I'm going to apply it everywhere. But I wonder how much in your awakening or in your process have you studied cults, and without like how a cult or a tribe
because it really goes back to, in my mind, this is why I consider all religions narratives. This isn't meant to be blasphemous. If you ask me if I believe in Jesus Christ, the answer is yes. If you ask me if Joseph Smith was a prophet, yes.
Okay, yeah.
Right? Like, sure, answer is yes to all of those. And I think they're all just narratives to explain situations.
Okay,
I grew up, my mom, we were homeschooled. My mom was questioning. We didn't know this at the time, but we ended up studying. Like, we lived in a small town, and we went to every church. We went to neighboring cities. We went to Buddhist temples, we went to every religion growing up, and we would study the religion. We'd go and we'd schedule time we'd go to the worship service. We'd participate as if we were part of the group. And then we would interview the leader of the congregation, no matter what the religion was. And then we'd write a paper about it. And this process, this is my current understanding that from a narrative perspective, if you look at the ancient mythologies all the way up to now, doesn't matter what religion, creed, tribe, whatever, they all have the same qualities and they all have the same narratives, though we use different, I call them sounds, right? So Christ, that's a sound. Jesus is a sound or a accumulation of letters. But it doesn't mean anything other than it's a sound, and it holds a concept. So it's a sound that represents a concept that's important for us. So when I look at things from a narrative perspective and then a tribal perspective, if we throw out the tribal nature of religion, because there is tribal natures and there's some rules, coffee, whatever, their intention from a tribal creation or a cult creation perspective, their intention is to create separation. Trump did the same thing, and this is why I think it's so fascinating. One of the things I wanted to share, to bring on the podcast with you, is Trump does the same thing. So what type of tribal natures did Trump bring into his group that were short phrases, short things that were identifiers that, like, oh, you're a Trump supporter, you're not a Trump supporter. So there was clear lines, and religion does this, Facebook does this, Apple does this. Guess what? I use all Apple products. I have iPads, iPhone, MacBook. Why? Because it's simple, right? They've sold me on the idea that it's simple. The difference between a Mac or Apple product and a Windows PC product is Windows is simple, user-friendly. Sorry, Apple's simple, user-friendly. Mac is for somebody more complicated than me, right? So if you view yourself as wanting something simple, user-friendly, you're going to use Mac. You're going to pay twice as much for a Mac because it's simple.
Yeah.
You know, so those are the small identifiers. And in religion, it's, hey, we need to know that I can see you anywhere in the world, and by the garments that you're wearing, we can have instant camaraderie. By the way you choose to, what you choose to eat or drink or not eat or drink, there's an instant connection all over the world. So where you're building a global tribe, where there's a lot of different cultures, what are the unanimous things you're going to create into your own culture? And it doesn't matter what type of leader you are, you have to create those things. And they might seem dumb to anybody not in the tribe, but they're part of the tribe. And there's no other reason other than to create separation. So the reason for them is a separation, not necessarily for any other purpose other than a separation in a narrative.
Oh, this is awesome, because this is I am a firm believer that human beings are tribal. Mm-hmm. There is this need to belong to a group. I go back to, that's how we've evolved. You know, we formed these tribes because that's how we could hunt and gather most effectively, so that everybody could survive the elements. You know, they're living in these, primitive times, right? And so that's how we've evolved. And so what I see happening, I see it in religion and politics, because like you said with Trump, I see how that I jumped in the Trump tribe,
that's fine. I'm in the Trump tribe too.
And I grew up. So I guess, when we talk about cults, when I think of a cult, it's typically, because it doesn't necessarily have to be bad.
No, cult is the root word of culture.
Traditionally, it's if you look into cults that have to do with religion, what I found is I've looked into many of them. One of the common things is there's a man that starts it with other men, and usually there's some kind of sex involved. There's some kind of hierarchy where women are not really in that club. It's like you got these men and they're kind of controlling the women, but getting them to buy into whatever narrative it is, and they sell them on this idea of sex is what I've seen,
Sure.
you know. And I mean, not that that's the case for them all, but that's just what I have observed. And then what happens is the cult leader dies, and then the religion forms, because it's like, well, we got to continue this. And so the ones that actually grow, they just figure out how to adapt and make this into this religion, where sometimes it's like the cult leader dies and a majority of the cult members die too, in whatever weird process whatever they're worshiping. Like, you know, you can, I'm thinking of the David Koresh down in Texas. You know, that's a pretty good idea of a cult. But then there's also, was he really doing anything wrong? Like, was he really doing anything wrong, or was it, there's a lot of like conflicting arguments.
That one's really interesting, because was he really even, was there really ever even an abuse of children?
Exactly.
Or what was it really sex motivated? Like that one specifically didn't seem as sex motivated as some of the others. I mean, there are out there.
There are some, but that's one, you know, where they try to use that narrative, push that narrative, but then there's a lot of questions outside of that narrative with how they were rated and how they were treated. And so that's where I'm at. So I guess to really get some backstory, because your listeners are probably all over, but being in Utah, I imagine a lot of listeners are familiar with the LDS Church. And so I grew up in Utah. Orem, this area was like the big city for me. So I grew up in Farron, Utah, which is down by Price.
Yeah, there's nothing there.
Oh, it's a little small town, you know. And looking back, like, I kind of took it for granted, because that community was like family. Like, you weren't close with everybody, but you knew everybody was, and you know, most of your friendships were pretty close, because it's like that's all you have. Like, you're just there. And so I grew up in the LDS Church. I grew up going to church on Sunday, but it wasn't, I wouldn't say we were like really strict Mormons. It was just, when I say Sunday Mormon, like during the week, it was just like, we go to scouts or young men, young women's, but you know, it's church on Sunday, and I could still do stuff on Sunday. Like,
you want to go dirt biking?
Go ride four-wheelers, go up to the lake, like go hang out with friends. As I got older, I could do stuff on Sunday, and we would do stuff a lot as a family. You know, my mom's side of the family, all her siblings, mom lived there, my dad and his sibling and his dad. So it was like all family was there. And so I grew up, you know, going to church, but I always questioned, but I was shy, so I didn't ask questions. I didn't ask the why out loud, but in my head, I was constantly asking questions. I was very curious. When I got into high school, as a sophomore, I wanted to do a research paper on the pros and cons of medical marijuana. I'd never smoked marijuana, but I was just curious. They're saying this drug is bad, but now they're saying it's good. That's a conflict, right? All of a sudden it's good for medical, but yet it's illegal and demonized, and it's this gateway drug, which that's a whole nother conversation, because I do believe it is a gateway drug, but not to the gate that people think, more of an enlightenment. So it kind of goes back to like how our indigenous, like if you go back to answers, we can learn a lot from our ancestors. Plant medicine is just another thing to go back. Tribalism, like go back and, you know, people that are listening, go back and look into these, how it works, how in tune they are with nature. And so now I'm here asking these questions, and it's like, now I'm like smoking pot. My parents are like, oh, you must be smoking pot if you want to research it. I'm just curious, but now it's like, well, now I've got to try, right? Yeah. So now I got to go smoke pot. So I do. And I kind of liked it, right? But it's a conflict, because it's illegal, it's against the church, you know, and I'm just a dumb teenager, not educated at all. I'm trying to get education, but trying to find information back then. Like the internet was new, I had the dial-up internet at my house, and I had access, to go to the school because my mom worked for the school district to do like research and whatnot. Because I was into that. I was like just curious minded. But then I decided to go on a mission. So I do the mission and I come home and kind of the same thing. I was still in this conflict of like, man, there's so many things about the culture and the church and it provides a community. And there were so many aspects that I liked, but I just had a hard time finding my fit as a single return missionary. For whatever reason, I couldn't find my tribe. But I'm thinking, well, got to find the wife, right? But that wasn't really working out either. And so there was just a lot of guilt and shame because I made, different choices that weren't, up to the standards of the church. And I just was constantly like in and out. And I had all these conflicts to where it was like, I couldn't just leave because I'd still feel guilty, but I'd come back and it was just like this back and forth hell. I get married, in the temple, and worthily, like I'd gone through my whole disciplinary probation for a year. I didn't ever get kicked out of the church, but it was just like, I didn't do anything like seriously bad. It was just premarital sex and partying and whatnot. And now I'm in my marriage and now all these triggers are showing up from childhood and like all these things are going on and I'm still having this religious conflict. Like she grew up in the religion as a everyday Mormon. I was just a Sunday and like maybe once during the week Mormon, but I had a good childhood. Like my parents were awesome. Like they did a great job. I have one brother, but for whatever reason, the church just didn't really, I couldn't make it work for me. As much as I wanted it to, as much as there was so many things that I love about the church, for whatever reason, I couldn't. And so what basically happened is I get divorced. I was married for 6 years. We had 2 kids and we separated a couple times. And I was going through some therapy. I was being introduced to some of these ideas of like trauma and triggers. But I was really resistant because men don't go to therapy, right? Men don't talk about going to therapy. I mean, that was my belief back then. I've been divorced 6 years. So over the last 12 years, and this was in the beginning of the marriage. But I was just like, I want to make this work. So whatever it's going to take. I was like making that much of an effort, but it just, for whatever reason, the counsel that I was being given was always tied back to God. And I'm like, well, let's just say I don't believe in God. Well, whoa, you have to believe in God. It's kind of like this idea, like, like the bishop was our counselor, my ex-wife, they're kind of looking at me like, well, you have, like, that doesn't work. Like you can't not believe in God, but it's like, well, what if I don't? I mean, it was never that direct response, but just the look and the culture is like, well, you've got to believe in God and Jesus and like that you're progressing in this life. And this is just a test. And like the whole story and the narrative is awesome. Like I like the ideas and everything, but for whatever reason, it just, in my head, I could not really make it line up to like feel good because there was always that anxiety of like feeling guilty and not worthy and questioning like, God, I'm having this thought, like, like this, like with growing up before I'm even married, it's like you see a woman, it's like, man, she's hot, man. Like what she looks like, maybe. Like you have all these thoughts going through your head, and it's not like I'm gonna act on that, but you're single and you're on the prowl. Like these thoughts are coming through your head, but you're kind of told, don't have those thoughts. Like you got to like block those thoughts out and sing a hymn or whatever. And it's like, no, these are natural instincts. And then now I'm learning how to kind of control, like you have thoughts and they're okay because you're going to have multiple thoughts throughout the day, but it's not allowing that to rule your life. As if you have dark thoughts or immoral thoughts or whatever, it's just understanding like, you don't have to like act on those thoughts and you can be aware. It's really becoming aware. And I felt like in religion, I was not conscious. I just felt there's all this subconscious programming going on. And there was just this conflict. And so that's basically what leads up to me becoming outspoken, because I've always been passive. In the past, in my marriage, I was very passive. In relationships, I was never really outspoken. I didn't speak my mind. I didn't speak my feelings. And if I did speak my feelings, if I finally felt trust and like really to open up, I felt like it wasn't accepted or I was judged judged based on whatever I was feeling. And so it was like, I was like in this conflict again. Like, I feel like I need to express myself, but I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. I don't want to like disappoint anybody. Does that make sense?
It does. It's just it's so fascinating to me. And I was called as a Sunday school teacher for, I think I got to teach 2 lessons before they released me. And I don't know why they released me. But my friend who's second counselor, he said, "Oh, I'm sure it wasn't because of why you think it was." I'm like, "Oh, maybe. Who knows?" But I think for me, one question that I just, again, because of how I believe that everything's a narrative, God is a very expansive term, and based on the narrative of the gospel of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, right? So if you ever have the opportunity to study that or whatever, based on the narrative of that, I actually don't believe in forgiveness. Okay. So,
as in receiving, like being forgiven or forgiving others?
There's literally no, from my worldview or my religious view, there's no need for forgiveness.
Okay.
For anybody.
Okay.
If we're going off of the intention. So from my religious perspective, and again, this goes back into everything in life, leadership, politics, everything, but based on the religious narrative, right? And this is pretty much found across any religious narrative. Or if you're like, well, I don't want to believe in God or religion, then they say, okay, the universe and creator, and you can go find whatever. Okay, so we can talk about it in lots of different terms. This is funny because sometimes I'll talk about it in all universe feeling terms for people who are like, I don't believe in God, I don't believe in Jesus Christ, nothing. And so we'll clarify all the concepts and isolate and say, okay, this is the concept, you believe in this concept, this is how it works in life, this over here. And then they're like, yep, totally agree. I'm like, okay, I'm all on the same page, and say, okay, so this concept I label as the atonement. This concept I label as repentance. And they're like, nope, don't believe it anymore. And it's like,
no, I get what
we're just talking about, like, you have an emotional trauma to the words, but really the concepts is not something you disagree with. So my belief is that based on from all scriptural texts that I've been able to read, Quran, Talmud, all of them, okay, they all, the original purpose is creation. Anytime anybody teaches about any form of doctrine in their religion, it starts with the creation. Anytime a missionary in the scriptures goes and talks to somebody, starts with the creation. The Bible, all of them, they all start with creation. So the main purpose is to, from my perspective, to become a creator.
Okay, yeah.
That's it. Like the whole purpose was to become a creator. Now this negative energy, this Satan, whatever, this opposite of creation is, and in the LDS narrative, we call it the war in heaven. And somebody presented an idea that what if you didn't have to become a creator and you just went down, you got a body, and then you returned to God so we could all live as a family again, but you never learned creation. Well, at that point, we're now removing agency and we're removing the ability to choose. And that was the key central plan. So now we have all these people who theoretically, if you're here on earth and you chose into agency, you chose that you wanted agency, but every day that you're choosing not to create and you're choosing to sit idle, you've essentially rejected the plan again in your life. And that can happen. That can go back and forth every day.
This is awesome, man, because we're on the same page.
Yeah. So like this happens. Well, if everything in this life, if this life is to learn to become a creator, number one, and if everything in this life is an opportunity to learn how to make a choice into and live in the light versus choose into darkness, we'll call it, less productive, more chaos. If everything that could possibly happen to you is just like a weight, that you would build your muscle with, an opportunity to strengthen your resolve to live in one reality or the other, would you ever, if I gave you the opportunity to grow, to stretch yourself, would you say thank you, or would you say that you need to, let's say, how do I say this? So if I'm the offender, would you need to forgive me for giving you the opportunity to grow?
I'm not sure I understand.
So
give me an example.
Yeah, so let's say I punch you in the face, right?
Okay.
Now you have inside of yourself a natural reaction to that. You can choose to love and respect me still, or you can choose to respond and out of anger, right? So you can either choose to be reactive or proactive. Okay. So I'm stimulating the decision in you. Are you going to choose to be an agent that acts, or are you going to choose to be somebody who doesn't act, or that just reacts to outward circumstances? Now I give you this gift. Now this gift comes in the form of punching you in the face. Do you need to forgive me for punching you in the face, or do you need to be grateful that I gave you an opportunity to grow?
Ooh, that's going to make me think, because I've never thought of it that way before.
And it doesn't matter what the offense is, right? They could stab you, they could kill you, they could rape you, they could do whatever. And ultimately, you get to choose, am I going to choose into light or choose into a darkness? And anytime you're reacting, just simply reacting, rather than making that conscious choice, then you are, by my definition, giving up the right of agency that you fought so hard for in pre-existence. So it's like, that's just the one overarching thing. Well, then the atonement comes in. If you believe in Christ, okay, so a little illustration here. Yeah. So if this is me and I do something to you, now based on the LDS narrative, okay, and not just the LDS narrative, but anybody who believes in Jesus Christ.
Most
Christian narratives, and you could even expand this past Jesus Christ to Judaism and like all these other things, who believe that there's some form of intercessory, because some people believe it's Christ, some people believe it's Allah. It doesn't really matter who you believe it is. But again, this is just the concept of intercessory. So if I do this to you, who is ultimately responsible for the act of me punching you? If you believe in the narrative.
Who's responsible?
Yep. Who's ultimately responsible? The one, from your perspective, who's ultimately responsible for me punching you?
You are the responsible one.
So I would say in that situation, you don't believe in Christ and you don't believe in the atonement, right? Because if you believe in the atonement, this is my hypothesis, right? If you believe in the atonement, then it's infinite and it covers all people's mistakes. So before I ever even punched you, he's already atoned for my sins, for my whatever. So from your perspective, you're only dealing with this intercessory concept or person. He didn't do anything to you, but he's the one taking the blame.
Okay.
He's the one posting bail. He's the one saying whatever. Now, if you say, no, what you did, per se, you dying on the cross or whatever, what you did is not good enough for this act that he did to me, then in effect, you're also saying, and it's not good enough for me either.
I guess I look at that situation in what I've experienced now is if you and I are right here and you just punch me in the face. Now, it just whatever. And if it was vice versa, like if I punched you in the face, that from that point on, now it's like, how is that person that got punched going to respond? The narrative that society pushes is that you're going to punch back, right? That's what we get kind of taught.
Yeah, defend yourself or whatever. And I'm not saying that that's not necessarily a bad strategy, as long as it's a choice that you're making rather than a reactive.
Understanding choices. Like, it wasn't my choice to get hit in the face. Like if I just walk outside and somebody cold cocks me, like that's not really, you know what I mean? Like I
understand that, but just the idea that it's not your fault is a victim mentality.
Okay, and that's where I'm going with this. So that's where it's like, it's not my fault that I got hit in the face, but I'm still, if I choose to play the victim, I'm still, I don't want to choose, like in life, you don't want to choose to play the victim, no matter what, even if it's...
Well, a lot of people do, and politically, and this is where...
And in religion.
And religion, yeah, both of them.
So I guess that's really, this is good that we're talking about this, because that's kind of how I've evolved from 4 years ago, I started asking questions about religion. For the first time, I was asking serious questions. Like I wanted to know the answer. Like before it was asking and just being told, well, you don't need to know this right now. Kind of this cop out. If we don't have the answer, instead of saying no, it's like, well, you'll probably find out later. Or this,
which goes against God's plan.
You're just not really ready for that answer. Or they just kind of, I felt like it was very just, we got to dodge this. Like, oh, we don't have the answer, but we can't say we don't have the answer. And so now I'm asking questions like, I'm seeing information on social media, and this is all about religion. It started out with the leaders of the church and their stipends and what that amount was. And then there was the CES letter, asking questions about Joseph Smith and the first vision, and, the Book of Abraham and the Book of Mormon and a lot of the early doctrine of the church. And I'm seeing there's different narratives. And so then I'm curious, because I'm just like, okay, like, well, what's true? What's not true? What do I really know? And so I basically just, I read the CES letter. I go back to the beginning and just kind of make a timeline, and I start analyzing, events. Joseph Smith dies, and then we have the tribe, the culture divides, and most of the people came out west to Utah, but people did scatter. And then I see the manifesto to end polygamy. That creates another division. And then all of a sudden I see like civil rights movement, and they give the blacks priesthood. Now we got to fit into society. I'm making this timeline, and I'm looking at the narrative that I was taught and this new narrative that's coming in. I'm trying to figure out how it lines up, is that's kind of where I'm going with this. And I just come to this conclusion. I'm like, I don't believe in it, but I started playing the victim, because I realized like what I wasn't consciously aware at the time, but during my life, I was playing the victim most of the time, if not all. In my marriage, it was always her fault, and then I do this, well, yeah, I can identify that I do this and this and this wrong, but she's the problem. Like she does more wrong than me. And it was this thing. And I believe that she was doing the same thing, because it was always this conflict of who is right, who's wrong, and I'm questioning religion. Like, I don't know if I believe in this, So we get divorced, and now I can just do like whatever I want. I'm free to think however I want, do whatever I want. And so now I'm just like asking these questions. But what I found very fascinating is that as I'm asking questions, like my close friends and family are like resistant, and they're freaked out about it. It's like, how dare you question God? How dare you question the prophet? It was almost like this, who are you to question authority? And I was like, that really rubbed me wrong, because it's like, well, who am I not? Why can't I question authority? I don't want to just be told what to do. I want to know I'm being told to do something, and if I'm on board with it, if it makes sense and works for me, I'm all in. There's certain things, like there's universal truths. Like I like to lift weights and work out. I love it and I hate it, because there's just some days I'm like, I don't want to do this because it's challenging. And but I know that that's a law of the universe, that if you work out your body physically with you don't have to go to the gym. You can, whatever physical activity you want to do, walking is a form of physical activity. I mean, it doesn't have to be super strenuous or rigorous, but I like lifting weights and heavy weights, because it's something I've done since I played football in high school, and I've just kept that consistent in my life because I realize that it makes me feel good. So that's just this law that I know, like you can sell me on it because I can do it, and I feel the benefit, and I'm like, okay, there's things in religion that you can sell me on. Like there's certain things about it that make sense to me, like having community, having law and order. Like I believe law and order is important and necessary. I can go through the 10 commandments. I can go through the 7 deadly sins, the virtues, and I can see how these are like universal truths. I think we do get caught up in words because there's power with words, and there's triggers with words. And so there's certain words we don't want in our life anymore. And that's okay. Like if you can find out a new word, if you don't want to say it's God, call it source.
Yep.
Like there's some source of energy. If you can't feel that, like be atheist, whatever you want, but you cannot, I don't know how like a person can deny like some kind of universal energy source of light and that we all want to be connected to, but it's what's the route, like what's the narrative we want to follow. And so that's, as I started to just ask questions and be outspoken, I started to find people that I vibed with. But see, what was very interesting about my experience is I was really like how I've been with politics. I don't know how long we've been on.
It's probably about 6 months that I've been following
so
on Facebook.
Back in 2017, 2016, I started kind of opening up about some of my story and just, my divorce and things I had experienced in life. And then it slowly transitioned into me. I was like wanting to build a network. So I'm seeing people monetize using social media, like building a brand.
Mm-hmm.
And I love fitness. Like, I can use this to maybe advertise. It's free. Like, why not try? I was like really trying to figure out some way to like use this to my advantage. Like it just for whatever reason. And so I'm following people that are doing this and I'm trying to kind of mimic and use stuff that they're doing. I'm starting to listen to podcasts. I get really into Joe Rogan during this time, Mormon stories, and I'm listening to people's stories and I'm hearing a lot of different perspectives on life and a lot of different life experiences. And I'm realizing like I was so married to this narrative and this belief system and it didn't work for me. I was like conflicted. And now I'm like, I'm not going to be married to any of my beliefs. I'm just going to divorce them all. Mm-hmm. And so now it's like, I'm listening with this open mind and like seeing like, okay, there's certain things that I see people that do that I necessarily don't want to do, but that is what is going to make me feel better at the end of the day. And so my beliefs about religion completely changed, but I started becoming more confident in myself because now I'm becoming confident in what I believe in. It's not what my parents believe. It's not what my friends or my coworkers or anybody else around me, because I'm pretty isolated. I'm divorced and single, but I kind of just decided I can't date right now. I don't even know, the dating failed for the first year and a half. I had 3 different girlfriends within a year and a half. I mean, I moved in with the girl in like a few months and then moved out because I was so all over the place because I wasn't solid in a belief system. Mm-hmm. I hadn't been solid in a belief system even when I got in my marriage. It was just like, well, she's going to help me stay on the straight and narrow. But the more I just became outspoken, like this year, I was prepared for this year for whatever reason, because I took a lot of arrows. I took a lot of criticism. Yeah, I found support, but I saw the victim mentality and it finally hit me. It's like, dude, you're being the victim. Like, quit being a bitch. Like, you need to like take ownership and realize like you can't blame the church. You can't blame any of these past experiences because it happened. It is what it is. So like getting punched in the face, walking out the door, you punching in the face, like, yeah, I can hit you back or I can be pissed off. And there's probably going to be some kind of emotion. Sure, if I get hit in the face, odds of me hitting back are very, very high. That's because then you trigger my dark side. But then I'm starting to realize like I do have this shadow side that I used to think was Satan, but it's just within me. It's just this shadow side within me. I have the dark, I have the light, and it's realizing like when I get triggered like that with a punch in the face, like, okay, like, I want to get to the point where I can step back and take a deep breath and be like, and not let it affect me. Like, that sounds kind of out there.
It may happen, may not. That's how I would respond.
That feels like self-mastery to me, to be able to get punched in the face and just step back and be like, and stand your ground, where it's like, you don't have to retaliate. And then it's like, and if it keeps happening, it's just like fucking just, I don't know. Like, because it's so, I'm so programmed to just want to like defend myself and fight back, which, you can make all kinds of arguments, but at the end of the day, I can't play the victim. I saw so many people leaving the church because I got into these ex-Mormon groups, and I'm trying to find my tribe. And that's just a whole other tribe of identity that they're not happy either. And that's when it hit me. I was like, damn it, like I can't be mad at the church. And so 2020 comes along, and I've got myself playing the victim. I mean, it's something that we just have. It all comes down to awareness. Mm-hmm. As I started like going through this religious thing, like questioning religion, and then I finally decided, you know what? It's not for me. Let's just get the divorce and move on, because for whatever reason, it's just not working out, and it's okay. And so once I made that decision, and this was in 2018, because I even still tried to go as not even believing in this anymore. Because I looked into stuff, and then for me, I just said, you know what? I don't know if it's true or not. I was 100% sure that this was the only true church, and now I'm not 100% sure. I believe there are truths in it, and there are a lot of things. Like I said, I still believe in God. I just don't believe in God as in a dude with a beard and long hair. And I believe in Christ, but I believe in like Christ consciousness. So we all have this light of Christ within us. Like I said, we all have this dark side. And so that's kind of where my beliefs have transitioned. But I saw ex-Mormons going atheist or agnostic and being very, very certain in their beliefs. But it's like, wait, how can you go back to that? You were so certain that this isn't true. Like now you're so certain this is right. I just don't know. I'm fine with saying I don't know. I have all kinds of ideas because that's what's fun. I like being curious and like playing out different scenarios of whatever. But I was like, I can't play the victim anymore. And so my political transition and awakening, and the reason why I'm a Trump supporter, it's not so much about Donald Trump, the man. It's more about the movement and the idea. So and this is general, if I look at the country, like across the board and basically, more so here in Utah where I'm actually living in it, because it's, I don't really know what's going on out there. I can kind of get an idea.
Watch TV, but who knows if news is even accurate. It
kind of just feels like you have this liberal, conservative, left, right, extreme, radical left, alt-right. Like it's all about this identity, right? Like being on one side or the other. And it's like, I don't like that. But at the same time, when I see the average, common, everyday Trump supporter, it just feels like it's somebody that wants to be a creator. Like we were talking about creating, it's like they want to be an entrepreneur, whether that's a small business or working for somebody. They want to be able to provide for their family, for themselves, to contribute to society. They want law and order. Most of them are pretty, I feel like, depending on the age group. Like in my age group, I would say we're fairly progressive. Like I'm okay with gay people. Like it doesn't like, that's not an issue to me. Like if that's your choice, that's your choice. Transgender. If you decided tomorrow you wanted to identify as a woman and you wanted to go get a set of tits and whatever, like I'm okay with that. But at what point does it end? Because now they're trying to say it's okay for a man or a young man, I guess in high school is where they're starting this, to choose to be a girl and compete in girl sports. I have a girl that plays sports. I don't want that because they're built different. Men and women, male and female, the bone structure, everything is different. So it's like that you're biologically born male or female. But if you choose to be whatever you want to be, but don't expect everybody else to cater to you. You're going to have to figure out how to fit in you maybe have to find your tribe or how to fit into society. But just to think that you can do whatever you want now and that we should just like.
So how do you
does that make sense?
It makes sense. I think we have similar views there, but how do you teach, because how old are your kids now?
8 and 10.
8 and 10. So how do you, because obviously you went through this heavy involvement in a religion. My assumption, and correct me if I'm wrong, but my assumption is your children are still
involved. They've both been baptized.
Yeah. So they're still
involved.
I
totally support it. So
how do you teach them to still be involved but not be a victim to the judgment and and this sounds really bad, but whatever, the small-mindedness of like, oh, we only have X amount of information and we'll just have to wait till the next life to get it, or whatever it is. How do you teach them to not go through what you went through?
That's something I haven't had to do yet. They're young enough that they haven't really like the conversation in regards to religion. They just know I don't go to church. They know I don't wear garments. Like they are picking up on things, but it's never been the conversation of like, you know, if they question, because right now they're not really questioning anything.
So
Does that make sense?
Well, it makes sense if you believe it, but statistically it's not true.
Okay.
So like from a psychological perspective, most individuals decide their core axioms of life between 4 and 8 years old.
Okay.
By the time somebody's 8 years old, they've basically decided right and wrong, who they're going to be in life, and the status quos. And then everything else is, at that point, they're comparing the rest of their life to what they learned when they were 4 to 8 years old. And so although it doesn't appear as though they're questioning, they're like a sponge accepting whatever they're taught. And this is something I'm trying to be conscious of with my kids.
Yeah.
And it's been interesting because we don't have church anymore, really. I mean, like it's not sacrament meeting and that's it for little kids. But how do you teach your kids? Because if you aren't teaching them, they are at least every Sunday learning what the church is teaching them. And when I say the church, I mean the generational creep of people who are trying to disseminate what they believe is the cultural doctrine of the church. That's what I mean by the church, which is not doctrine in my opinion, but whatever.
Yeah.
So that's who's influencing your kids right now. And I'm assuming they go to church every week with their mom or somebody.
Yeah.
So if there's not the other perspective being taught, then they're going to have had 4 to 8 years old. And I'm grateful that my wife and I are on the same page in this conversation with our kids, but I don't know how. I have a lot of people who are divorced who listen to this, and I don't know what the balance is. Like, how do you balance parentship and say, okay, look, this we're allowed to teach our kids. I'd prefer you not teach that to our kids. Or do you say, look, I'm going to teach them what I'm going to teach them. You teach them what you want at your house, and we just go for it and see how they end up. Like, how is that balance?
Right now, I would say the balance is she does her thing. When she's remarried, they have a couple kids together too. He has kids from his previous marriage, and they're both active, and so it's like, but you know, whatever they teach in their home, like that's their home, right? Sure. So when they're with me, this is where we've had it's hard co-parenting.
I can't imagine. Honestly,
it's difficult, but. You know, when they're with me, I'm just me. Like I just have some rules. I don't talk bad about their mom around them. I don't talk bad about the church. I don't necessarily even bring up church. I just try to engage with them as a dad that just loves them. And just, you know, I just show them that I'm your dad. I love you. And let's just have fun. We're here for this weekend because I get them on weekends. So I don't see them a lot. I don't see them on a regular basis. Before COVID, I would pick them up for a daddy-daughter date once during the week. That could be a Tuesday, a Wednesday, or a Thursday. It just kind of depended on schedules. And they were active in sports and gymnastics and stuff. My oldest daughter played volleyball and softball. And so I was actively, you know, one of the reasons I moved up here is because I wanted to be involved in that way. You know, if they have school things, like, and this is all pre-COVID, right? Like things are like going pretty good. Like I'm seeing them I get them 1 weekend a month. And so when I have them, it's just me getting to know them and just being interested in their life and showing that, you know, there's no book on being a parent. So I'm just looking at like, you know, what I experienced and I'm just not trying to I really try not to influence them, if that makes sense. Like I try to just allow them to be curious. Cause I can sense my oldest daughter's got some curiosity. And for example, we're driving, and this was a couple years ago, we're driving on a road trip. My youngest daughter falls asleep. My oldest starts talking about dinosaurs, and we get into like, you know, more ancient history and stuff. And like I can see the wheels spinning and she's just curious and I'm just entertaining it. And I'm going along with her because I'm curious too.
Yeah.
So I'm just like, that's where I'm at. It's like right now, like we don't really have the deeper conversations because they're younger, but I just look at it as they grow older and as they have curiosity, I'll entertain their curiosity. I will just allow them to kind of form their own beliefs. Yes, they're going to have that influence and they've had that influence. But in my situation, when I got curious, I didn't have anybody to turn to because both my mom and dad, that wasn't a conversation I could have because you can't question. This is how it is. Just do it. Shut your mouth, sit down, just do it. I mean, not directly like that, but just that attitude.
But that's attitude.
So with my kids, it's more of this, what you want to entertain this idea of whatever question you have, let's go there. Let's have a conversation. And so I feel like a lot of what I'm going through is preparing me for that. And whether or not it works or it doesn't work, I'm just, as I cross those bridges, I'll cross them. But right now we have a good relationship. My kid, I talk to him so now I FaceTime him every week and
right.
I'll be getting them next weekend. And so, and I just try to just build that relationship and just know that I'm just kind of like you guys. Like I never want to lie to my kids. I think the worst thing you can do is lie to your kids or play the victim. Like I don't want to see my kids playing the victim because that's what going back to this whole thing is like, when I became conscious that I was playing the victim, I saw a lot of people leaving the church playing the victim, but I see this left mentality. To me, it screams victim, 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 poor me, save me, somebody save me because I can't do it on my own. And it's like, I was there and I'm so tired of being there. Like I have, for whatever reason, church taught me that I was going to be a creator, but if I didn't catch the bug or catch the
creation bug there.
Creation or just I didn't feel like I could do it now. It was just almost like, well, I gotta like follow this system.
Interesting.
And so now that I broke free in 2020, as I became super outspoken, I'm like, and as I started creating my podcast, and then like I said, I've gone on this retreat. And so now I was like, I'm not finding my tribe because I'm leaving church and I'm not vibing with
the people that
are leaving. Not really. Like there are some, but the ones that are really outspoken, I just, for whatever reason, I just didn't really vibe because I was like, that victim mentality scares me. So I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to build my own tribe. But it took a friend, my friend Michaela. I connected with her through social media, through podcasting, because she's open about her story. I'm open about mine. We connect. And then all of a sudden we match really well together with certain things on what we believe. And she's like, let's do a retreat. And then I'm like, yeah, let's do that. Like, why not? It just hit me like, why not build our own tribe?
Which was really funny.
Let's start our own cult.
Which was funny because that post specifically, when you posted, hey, we're going to have this spiritual retreat or whatever.
I got my Speedo.
And you're in your Speedo and she's in her bikini. And there was like a lot of shade thrown at that. What is this? It looks like some sexual adventure or whatever. Like, and you're like, no, it's not that at all. I'm like, well, those are the wrong pictures to choose. I'm like, I don't know. I hadn't had a conversation with you yet. I don't know her at all, but from my interaction with you on Facebook, as far as like seeing what was going on, I'm like, this guy's he's just here to have a good time and to explore. I don't think he's out there doing the swinging thing. That's not at all the purpose. So I was like, well, I guess if this is the only post you saw of his, maybe you could get that. But just having had observed you over the last few months, it's like, I don't get that from him at all. I didn't know her, so I still don't know her. But it was really interesting, that post in particular, where it's like, again, right after or pretty close to right after the election and all of this craziness ensued. And then that was posted and people had went from seeing you all in the pro-Trump, pretty evangelical about the culture or the mission and purpose of like victim versus creator, into this, we're going to go have this spiritual awakening, the world might be ending type of like, I could see it that way, but I'm so just like, no, this is not what this is. Anyways, so it was a funny post for sure, but the amount of shade that got thrown at that was really fascinating to me.
And I knew it was going to create some questioning or some like, wait a second, some conflict, because it's spiritual, and I'm in a Speedo and she's in a bikini. And to give some backstory,
they both look great, by the way.
Well, there was a hot tub. She was sitting in a hot tub, so there's going to be a hot tub at the cabin that we're renting. So this is in Bear Lake. The retreat. I rented a Airbnb cabin, 6 bedrooms. It slept 22. 10 people ended up coming. Had a hot tub, but I wanted to do a polar plunge. Mm-hmm. So I thought I was going to have to cut a hole in the ice, but it wasn't even frozen. There's spots that was frozen, but we found a spot we could just walk out and do that. So that was like the idea of spirituality has really changed for me, to where it's this body, mind, spirit. It's all this one connection. And so, and it comes down to like healing and really identifying these traumas and triggers. So as Michaela came into my space and some of these other women, she's very into astrology. And, you know, I see these crystals and they're burning sage, and I'm like, is she a witch or what? Like, cause she's got this capability of, she's very intuitive and she's very gifted, and it's blown my mind some of the things that how she's been able to connect with people that are going through some trauma. I mean, I experienced it firsthand because of what happened with me first, and then I witnessed it with other people. Mm-hmm. So her idea was, you know, to do some astrology readings on this retreat, and that's not my wheelhouse. I support it, and I think it's very cool, and I'm getting into it, but it's not really my wheelhouse. I am more in this like trying to find spirituality and mental fortitude and doing things physical, like physical challenge, you know, having the mental fortitude to like endure certain trials in life, because I didn't develop that. I was constantly in the victim mentality. So I had no real mental fortitude, you know, learning like discipline. And so that's combination of spirituality. So doing the polar plunge, like, who wants to get in cold water? It's 32.7 degrees. We saw the sign. It said 32.7 degrees. And we went in, because Michaela jumped out. I posted a video, you can watch it on Facebook. She jumps out of the water.
It's cold.
3, 4, 5 girls, me and my buddy Chase, because I knew Chase was going to do it. He was down, and we stayed in for 3 minutes. And then what I thought was the most fascinating is the night before, there was a certain person that was not going to do it. They couldn't do it. They had all these excuses and reasons why, right? She made it 3 minutes. It's like the night before, she was telling herself all these stories about why she couldn't do it before she even tried it. And she made it to 3 minutes. And so that was the deeper aspect. Like, people see this picture and they don't read what I wrote about it. You know, it's like they just look at the picture instead of, they're judging the book by its cover. Because I made a post, and if you read the post, you'll get an idea of like the idea and the intention. Because, you know, as an LDS person, one of the things I struggled with was being shamed with sex. You know, I masturbate in high school as a teenager, you know, even when I'm hitting puberty, because it's like, I'm going through all these hormonal changes and I'm horny, like, but I can't have sex, and I don't even know what to do about sex. You know, my buddies find a Playboy, and so that was like my first introduction to pornography. But it's like, I felt so much guilt and shame, but I didn't want to tell anybody, right? Like, I finally come clean before my mission. It's like, you know, I gotta come clean. I don't want to be guilty. And it's just like, well, then it was kind of like, well, it's not that big of a deal. But it's like, why do I feel so much guilt about it? And then I come home from my mission and kind of like the same thing. Like, I mean, it was one of those things on my mission where it was like, I felt like I got in pretty good control of my sexual urges, but it wasn't perfect, right? Sure. Human being. I come home and then it just feels like I can't control it at all. And I end up losing my virginity before I was married, just some random girl, like, and then like sex was just, there was all the relationships around women, it always it involved this thought of sex. It was always about like, I'm dating her, or like I'm interested in this woman because I find her sexually attractive. Like, but I want to get to know her. I don't want just that, but it's like, that's kind of the initial process, you know. And then
do you feel like they also had the same interest?
What do you mean?
Like were they just as interested in the sexual aspect of the relationship as you were, or was it like one-sided? I have no idea, because it was very like, that's like having sex before marriage. Like you're both in this idea, like you're both into it in a way, I guess. I never had any girls proposition me for sex before marriage that I'm really aware of. So if they did, I didn't know about it. It was just, I was that dumb, but I didn't like physical contact in general. I was aware of that if we chose to get physical, even kissing, then because I knew that that's where my mind was, and my sexual drive, then it would really inhibit my ability to actually get to know the person on a deeper level.
I was not consciously
because I knew that the sex would get in the way of it, or like the sexual everything would get in the way. And so what's interesting is, in my experience, it's not that I didn't want to do those things, but I was aware enough to say, no, I'm not doing those things.
Okay.
For at least unless you were my girlfriend. Like I would date girls for 10, 12, 13, 14, like lots of dates before I would kiss them. Even my wife, I remember we were gone on multiple dates, and I was like, hey, I want you to be my girlfriend. Like I want to be exclusive here, but I still am not going to kiss you. And she was like, what? Why? You know, and all of her friends were like, this is really weird. He's not going to kiss you, but there's issues here with this man. And because I don't know who, I think it's a cultural thing where the girl thinks the guy expects it and the guy thinks the girl expects it. And so both of them try and move too fast when both of them hate it. Both of them wish they weren't moving that fast.
I love where this is going.
But because they both think the other person expects it, or they're going to ditch them. Because I had girls on our first date, I'm like, look, I learned to lay down ground rules really fast on dates. So like first date, say, hey, look, I don't kiss people, and that's not my girlfriend. This is just how it is. So please don't try. Not interested. The girls would still try and kiss me. I'm like, come on, man. Like, have some respect for me and my boundaries. It's not that I don't think you're attractive. I think you're super hot, but that's just not what I want our relationship to be about if we have a relationship. And that a lot of girls would, once they've really found out that you were not going to kiss them until, but I don't know if it was like they were concerned that I was gay or that something was going on with me, or they just didn't get their quick fix. I don't know which it was. But that's why I'm wondering, like, is it just you, or do you feel like the girls had the same internal conflict and weren't able to actually communicate it?
And that makes sense, because I wasn't sure really where you were going, like what you were asking. But yeah, I think it was this mutual, like, that's what we're supposed to do. Like we're supposed, so to give a little backstory, like the first girl I kissed was when I was 18 years old. I never kissed a girl before 18. And I didn't even have a girlfriend. The girl I kissed when I was 18 was kind of just this friends with benefits. But because I was focused on my senior year, I was getting ready to go on a mission. No smoking pot, no drinking beer, that I had done in my sophomore and junior year. Mm-hmm. You know, I was kind of the closet. I mean, everybody's kind of a closet party person because you're in high school. Right. You're underage and you got to hide it so your parents don't find out.
And everybody knows you.
But yeah, so I had a group and whatever. But my senior year, I was like, no, like I had a different group of friends. And I was going on dates with this girl a lot. Like I took her to homecoming, and then we just kind of kept asking each other out to the dances. Like girl's choice, she'd ask me, like it was just, that was how the year went. And then our group of friends, her group of friends, mine, hung out together, and we just were together and we made out all the time. But I was not going to go that route because I was taught, like, you just don't do that. Mm-hmm. And I had the desire, but it was scary for me. I was like, I'm not going to cross that. I had made up my mind, like, I'm not going to go there. So it was just making out, and I was fine with that. I go on my mission and I come home and it's like, I'm getting a lot of attention from girls. More attention than I got ever in my life. but I didn't know really how to like do it. I was kind of weird around girls because I wasn't used to this. Like, I'm not used to like having girls like want me to take them out, and girls that are really hot. And I'm just like this has never really happened. I'd go down to St. George to school. You know, I kind of dated a girl a little bit, and then, but that's the thing. It's like, there's always this idea. You start dating somebody, it's like, well, you gotta man up or balls up and like make the move, right?
Do something.
And so once I started doing that and got confidence in doing that, it was just like, and it didn't go anywhere. Like, the dating didn't progress. I started beating myself up. I was like, well, what's wrong with, like, you start playing the victim, right? I played the victim a lot. And then it got to the point where I was like, fuck getting married. I want to know what having sex, like, I'm sexually curious. So I want to know what it's like. And I just got myself in a situation. I started, you know, I moved into a house, like a party house in college, it was like a frat house, but there wasn't fraternities down there. We didn't belong to a fraternity, but we had like a brotherhood. Like, I had some buddies that are still friends for life, you know, like I just saw one over Thanksgiving, like when I go down to St. George, saw a few of them. So, I mean, it's just like, I developed this brotherhood, but it was like, we weren't living the church standards. Some of us were return missionaries, some of us weren't. It was just a mix of all kinds of culture. But I ended up having sex, and it was like, it was enjoyable. And it was like, oh, like, but then I was that guilt too. It was like, I liked it. And I was like, but there's that guilt and shame. And then, you know, this, like, then you're like, I'm not going to do this anymore. And then I start dating a girl, and it's like, no, like, I had the boundaries, but it just, for whatever reason, it happened. And she was LDS, I'm LDS, and we talked about marriage, but it's like, now we've had sex. So we can't lie about this. Like, we got to figure it out if we're going to get married in the temple. So you have that conflict. But I feel like it's just, in my experience, it always felt like we both felt like that needed to happen. However it happened. But I just had this idea in this program subconsciously that when I was around women, it was about that sexual pursuit. And so now, like, what I find very interesting in bringing this up is because, and this is with my podcast and the retreat, like, I've had some beautiful women on my podcast, like some hot girls, but I'm at a place in my life where, you know, I've slept around, you know, I did the Tinder thing after my divorce, the swipe right and hook up, and that's it, right? And it's like, it's exciting and it's fun for a while. Like, there is a thrill, and like, it is kind of this exciting thing because it's like, it's this game, and you're like getting these girls and you're having sex with them. And it's just like, you start getting hooked on this idea of I mean, it sounds like kind of messed up to talk about it.
Stressful to me,
but it was kind of like, but it does. It gets to the point.
Exhausting.
It gets to the point where it's like, this is just exhausting. And
I can't even imagine.
And so, you know, I've taken, I would say in the last 4 years, so 4 years ago in 2016, and this is what's interesting with my whole journey is I decided, you know what, my life's fucked up. Like, I'm playing the victim. I'm at rock bottom. Like, nothing's going good in my life, but I have to take responsibility. And so I started making some commitments with myself. Like, one of them was being celibate or not having sex until I was actually in a committed relationship. And so, you know, I went 2 years, and then it just,
that's a long time.
You know, I've had sex 3 times with 3 different women in the last 4 years. But it's because I've had this, but I haven't met anybody that I really feel this is somebody that I want to get into a relationship with, but I haven't been really, really actively pursuing that either. It's been more of a passive pursuit, which I realized I wasn't living intentionally. And 2020 taught me that I was not living life intentionally, was being wishy-washy. I had all these ideas and things that I wanted to do, but I was just, for whatever reason, holding back. And so 2020, I just stepped into it. And as I stepped into, like, really my purpose and power, I didn't know what it was. I'm still trying to figure it out, but things just started to shift. Like, I just became very confident in who I am as a person, what my beliefs are, and that I'm okay if I'm wrong. Like, I've been very pro-Trump, but I'm okay with being wrong, that maybe he's not the right guy. But You haven't sold me that he isn't the best guy because the day, like just what we've experienced, like right after, right?
You definitely haven't sold me that the person that got chosen is better.
But here's the thing: is I'm not going to be Joe Biden's not my president. I'm not going to be that. I want people to win. Like, and that's what shifted in my life. Another thing is like, now I'm like not playing the victim. I'm seeing how this left agenda is just creating soft pussies. And it's like, I felt like a soft pussy. I don't want that in my life. Like, I want to be a leader. I want to be with this movement of men that are actually rising up, because I see these women that are silent on the right side. They're not really vocal about their support of Trump. But when I talk to them, have conversations with a lot of enlightened women, they're like, they see it's like Trump's the alpha male, Biden's the beta male. Like, Trump is just, love him or hate him, he is who he is, and he has something that draws people, that the people trust him to follow him, whether or not he's leading them the right way or the wrong way. I don't think he's the savior or anything.
Yeah, and we don't know what is right.
He exposed so much stuff that I was not aware of. Like, so much stuff has come to my reality that he's exposed, because I've done a lot of same thing I did with religion, I've done with politics. I went back to 1776 and I kind of made a timeline, and I've kind of analyzed trends and traditions of politics and how it all works. And I'm like, God, we've been played
so many times.
Both parties are, in my opinion, and this is just my opinion, I could be wrong, but both the right and the left work together. It's like they just want us to think it's this separation, because that's how you conquer. If you can divide, you can conquer. And so I feel like they're trying to divide us within, but it's hard to, like, you get misinterpreted when you're a Trump supporter, because I want unity. But you're labeled automatically, if you're a Trump supporter, it's like, well, you don't believe in unity. It's all about this cult mindset.
It's a cult mindset of separation. And if you're not willing to, what the biggest danger I think that comes in with cult language is you have to accept cult terms, words, concepts, but you have no control over what those words or concepts mean. And when I say that, when you accept them, you may have clarity in what they mean when you accept them, but the owners of the cult or the creators of the cult, they can shift that definition of the meaning of the words or the meaning of the concepts. And because you've already bought into it and you're so ingrained in it, that as they shift it, then it's a weird form of gaslighting where you don't really recognize that they actually are. They got you to buy into something that was palatable. Then they shift the definition and say, oh, this is what we always meant. And you're like, oh, that's interesting. But I guess, okay, as long as my original definition is still included in it, then I still believe in it. But if you ever say, well, I don't believe in their new definition, then rather than saying, oh, that's something wrong, they say, oh, so you don't believe in the original definition either? I'm like, no, I still believe in the original definition. Well, if you believe in the original definition, you also believe in this other definition. I don't believe in the extension of truth. I just believe in the truth that I accepted. And that's how they will separate the tribes. So unity is a good word that they chose. They chose to run on unity, and they rebranded what the word unity means. They rebranded what, even transgender or male, female, they've rebranded this. Like, how can we have the first woman president if women don't exist?
Right.
Or vice president, or is Joe a woman now? Or is Joe, like, they just convolute all of the definitions to where they can use it and flip their own words on themselves. But because they're the ones shouting, then it looks like you're the one who's not accepting what they're saying. Yeah. It's like, no, it doesn't add up. So it's an interesting thing politically, but it happens everywhere in our lives.
And that's the thing, is it happens everywhere. And if you really, like, what just came to my mind, because I don't really consider myself a very intelligent person. I'm kind of a moron in a way, but we all are. I try to take complex ideas and I try to break them down to make my simple mind understand it better. So, like, what I'm seeing now, it's like, let's make it smaller. Let's say we have a group of people here in Orem. We'll say an asteroid hit. And so there's just this select group, like very few, maybe 20 people in the group. For whatever reason, this 20 people, they survived, right? So what's the mentality now? Like, at this point, there's going to be people that are freaked out, right? And a lot of victim mentality. So, but somebody is going to take charge, right? They're going to be like, well, this is what it is. We've got to figure it out. We got to survive, right? Mm-hmm. So somebody will rise up. It could be, not necessarily has to be one person, but there are going to be people in that group that rise up because they're like, well, we got to figure out food, shelter, like say everything's destroyed. It's like, well, we got to figure this shit out now, right? And everybody's going to have a job, right? Everybody's going to have to contribute to make this work because we have limited resources. We don't even know how to really survive. Like, yeah, we have maybe read about it, but now it's real. Like, it's really happening. Like, nothing. We have to just start from the scratch now. And so if you look at it, that's when it separates people. And that's when it's like you're going to have people that if they don't contribute to the group, they're going to get left behind. Nobody's going to want somebody if they just sit on their ass every day when it's like, we need to go out and gather. We need to find water. We need to find, we need to find a good source of water, figure out how to get this water, get easy access. But then it's like, we need to gather some food. We need to get our provisions. So like, we need to figure all this out. You're going to have all these proactive people doing that. They're not going to want to share with the people that aren't helping, right? Because it's all about contributing, right? Everybody having a role, and it goes back to how we evolved, right? And so now here we're living in this world where I just feel like we're not living how we are supposed to be, because we've got into this system, whatever it is, and there's so many people that just want this free handout. And I'm fine with taking care of people, right? I'm fine if I know like we're all giving back to the pot and it's all getting distributed and how it should, but it doesn't feel that way. It feels like there's so many people that take advantage of the system. And that's what that left ideology sells, in my opinion, is this idea of like,
that you should take advantage.
You should take advantage of the system, and you need us. You need us because you can't do it on your own. But it's like, wait a second. Maybe I can't do it and that's kind of what taking it into my life, what I'm kind of noticing and just in my own personal life is like, I'm not really close with a lot of friends or family just because of what I've gone through. But now as I'm putting my vibe out and looking for my tribe, I'm attracting people that I'm like, okay, this retreat was a perfect example. Like there's 2 people on the retreat I met that were like solid now. Like, it's like we were meant to meet. Like, it was very divine. Like a spirit, like it was a spiritual experience because it was like, I know I'm supposed to meet these people and like create with them. I don't know exactly how, but like with Michaela, for example, it's like, and all of a sudden I'm finding balance instead of like feeling I have to run off this masculine energy that's exhausting. Women are doing the same thing. I see all these single women in my space that are running on this masculine energy because they have to provide for their children. They don't have anybody to help them. Yeah, they might get support from the father in ways, but it's still, they're usually the full-time gig. I have it pretty easy considering I don't have to be the full-time dad all the time, And so I have so much respect for these women because it's like, man, I don't know if I could really do it, but I realize I've been being complacent and I haven't been living my purpose. I've been searching and I've been doing a lot of inner work, but it's like, dude, you can't just keep doing inner work. You got to stretch yourself. At some point, you got to start stretching yourself.
Yeah, and I learned that from, like, I was listening to, before I started my podcast, I listened to podcasts kind of like you for probably 3 years, tons of different podcasts, probably 7 or 8 different podcasts every day, just like really consistent. Plus I was listening to books. And at some point, there's just so much intake of information, you have to start producing it, and it comes. And when it comes, and you don't really think about it, and it becomes just a natural, hey, we're going to start producing content. We have no idea where it's going to go. I have no idea where it's going to go most of the time. I'm happy producing it. And if somebody gets value, if one person gets value out of it, then it's a win for me.
Well, you know what really helped me? So Joe Rogan's my inspiration. I mean, he's the biggest podcaster in the world. Mm-hmm. But it was his podcast that just really helped me see a lot of this bullshit these stories I was telling myself. And so I was listening to a podcast. There was just a little clip, and it was about like doing a passion project. So that's really what when I started stepping into this podcast, like my podcast space, the creative juices started flowing, and it was like there was just this fear I had to get over. This fear of like, how am I going to sound on audio?
It sounds terrible the first little bit.
And who am I going to have? Because I want guests. Like, I don't want to do it by myself and just talk into a microphone. Like, there are people that can do that and they're very good at it. Like, for me, I don't, like, I like the conversation. Mm-hmm. Like, when you ask me how I do it, it's like, I like the in-person.
Right.
I have headphones. So I like throwing the headphones on, and for whatever reason, it just like cancels everything out. It's this symbolism of like, I'm just connecting with this person right now. Like, I'm all in, because there's so many distractions in my life. And it's like, this is like that moment. And after I did the first one, as I was a guest on a couple, I caught the bug. But when I finally did mine, it was like, I was going to do one a week. I just started doing them as they felt necessary. And like, guests were just coming into the space. Like, I would just reach out to certain people, get that feeling, instead of being afraid to just reach out. It's like, just, hey, I have a podcast. I've been following you on social media, because I've chatted with some of these people, and it just started happening. And it's like, oh, this is fun. Like, and then I'm starting to see, oh, I can be a creator. Like, I'm starting to be, I felt like I didn't have any artistic talent, like whether it's drawing or singing or dancing, or I played football in high school, and that was kind of like what I identified with. Right. And it's like, you kind of try, and then I identified with being a sports fan and being a weightlifter. But I realized, like, having these identities is not helping me. It's not helping me really live my purpose. Like, creating connection, for whatever reason, it gives me fulfillment. It helps me process all these things that I'm going through, and it opens the door of opportunity, because the more I'm putting myself out there, this door of opportunity is there. And instead of being afraid of what's on the other side of that door, just going with it. And the more I just let go and go with it, as scary as it sometimes might seem, like this retreat, the week of, like, I was all pumped until the week of, and then it's like, man, the nerves, the anxiety starts setting in.
People
like,
actually show up.
Am I a fraud? Like, am I really, like, the imposter syndrome? Like, Michaela was experiencing it too, which was interesting, because we were kind of in not the best communication, because we were both having these things, but we weren't communicating them very well. But once we like got together and did it and communicated, it was like, oh, like, we just had to break through that fear, step into that fear, and then realize, oh, like, on the other side was this wonderful experience and this memory I have that I'm like, I want to do it again. And it's like, I know it's not going to get easier, because as soon as it starts getting easy, that's when the complacency sets in, the laziness. And so my life now, I'm living with intent. It's like every day, like I'm slowly transitioning from this Monday through Friday, because I do work a 9 to 5, and I have a good job, and it's allowing me, I'm looking at it, it's really allowing me to have time to do this passion project. Like, I don't know where it's going, but it's my passion project. I love doing it. And so I'm just going to do it. And whatever, like I said, when opportunities come from there, I'm going to recognize them, and just, instead of questioning, be like, oh, I don't know. Because sometimes there's a point where you have to say no. Like, if it doesn't line up with your vision, like, I need to make a vision board. I have it written down, but I need to make a vision board and just really focus. Because now it's like, okay, I got to focus on the vision, because I'm in this creative stage, and just realize, like, if whatever is coming into this vision has to be aligned with what I'm trying to create.
I would start become more intentional. About, like, at least for yourself, because your intentions are going to change. As far as like what you want to get out of it. But if you can at least sit down and say, this is what I want to get out of this experience, as limited as it may be in the beginning, it's especially in Utah, and this isn't to say anything bad about any one specific person in the, we'll call it coaching space or whatever it is, life coaching space, because there's 1.5 million of them here in Utah. But I think it's important to be very clear to make sure you are aligning yourself with people with similar values and similar desire to seek for truth, and not just build their tribe. And because there's a healthy balance of both. There's a lot of people out there who are like, hey, you can be in our tribe and they're super friendly until they're not.
Yeah.
Until you're like, oh, I don't really like that area of my vibe. And then all hell gets broken loose. Yeah. And then there's other people who are very much, hey, if it works for you, great. If it doesn't, we don't have to work with each other. So I think that just be aware of that. But if somebody wanted to follow your journey, because this is what I like about this podcast today. I had no idea where this was going when we started. I told you that one from the very beginning. But this is what it looks like when somebody is going through the identity part of building a legacy.
Yeah.
It's literally this much of uncertainty, yet processing of lots of different information, and it happens at different times tables for different people. But everybody has a legacy. Everybody has some truth inside themselves. They just have to learn to find that truth. And sometimes that takes a little bit longer than others. But this is the journey, the process of finding that. For me, it's interesting for me because it happened for me on the big scale. I would say like the biggest changes in my life, I think, happened before my mission when I was 18, 19 years old. Was probably one of the biggest changes and realizations of who I wanted to become. Another time was when I was like 13 or 14. And then there was another time maybe in 2018 where like I've had these big shifts. But as far as like knowing what I wanted to do, it's been pretty, like I would say before my mission was probably the biggest, like this is what I want to do. And so that's been nice for me, but it's been 10 years almost since I've gone through this much self-identifying stuff, which is good because now I'm like, maybe I need to go back through this and rediscover where I want to go next. Because like I'm happy where I am. I think I still have my goals and my standards and what I'm targeting for, but I like where I'm at. So thus far, I've created what I wanted to create, but then the question is, what's the next step of creation for me?
That's what I'm becoming aware of.
And that's what I need to be more aware of. So if they wanted to follow you, Instagram, Facebook is a place. What's the name of your podcast?
Talking Truth with Toph. And those links, so on Facebook, I have a link to Spotify and Apple Podcast. On Instagram, I have the link to Apple Podcasts. I feel like Apple Podcasts is more popular among listeners that follow me. And
yeah. And you have what, 20 episodes now?
21.
21.
I'm going to be recording 22 tomorrow, and it's probably going to be similar to this kind of a conversation. Yeah. It's going to be somebody that really influenced my whole journey. I saw a post by this certain individual. And it was, I'm trying to remember the post. It was this idea of, because I won't remember it word for word, but it was this idea of what if, I'm going to butcher it. Like we live our lives, we make choices like in the religion. It's like there's certain stepping stones, right? Mm-hmm. You're making certain choices because there's this carrot on the end of the stick, or there's this place, the celestial glory, the celestial kingdom. That's what we're trying to achieve. Like we're trying to achieve this final destination, right? So it's like what the post got me thinking about is what if, like, are you living your life just to get to that place? Or are you living your life because you want to make those decisions just because it's what you like, it's because you want to do them because you want to do them, not because of any, you're not expecting anything in return. Mm-hmm. And it hit me for the first time. That's when it really hit me. It's like, I live my life. The reason why I'm like kind of fucked up is because I've been living my life having an expectation. Like I'm doing certain things because I want something in return. Right. And there's nothing wrong with doing things to get something, right? But it's the intention, right? My intentions were not correct for my life because I was just expecting. It's like, well, if I do this and this and this, then this should come in. If it doesn't, then I must not be doing something right.
Right. Yeah.
And so that conflict was always there. I felt like I wasn't worthy a lot. Like when things were struggling in my life, when things were good, it was like all glory to God. Like, thank you. Like, oh, like we've been blessed. But things start going bad. And for whatever reason, and in my experience, I would associate that to unworthiness. I must be doing something wrong because this shouldn't be happening. Like, why is this happening?
Which is funny because if you go back to my example of gifts, right? And why we have gratitude. If the things that are going wrong are really an opportunity to grow.
Exactly.
And things that are going right are really an opportunity to, most people aren't growing when times are good.
Do you ever listen to Jocko Willink?
I've listened to his book.
Okay, so you're familiar with him. Like he talks about this. There's a little clip. Like everybody, after listening to this, go YouTube. It's like 2-3 minutes. It's called "Good" by Jocko Willink. He's a Navy SEAL, former Navy SEAL, but now he coaches entrepreneurs on leadership because he was a leader and very good leader in the military and as a SEAL. But his idea is, if we're in battle and it rains or something goes wrong, something unexpected happens, good. Mm-hmm. You didn't get the promotion, good. Mm-hmm. This didn't go well for you, good. Like constantly saying good when bad things happen, because there always can be a good outcome. And see, I didn't see that. I was expecting something good to always come in based on how I was behaving. And so now I look at it and my beliefs have shifted to where it's like, I woke up as a 36, 37-year-old man, and I realized like I was being the victim. I had all these bad things going on in my life because I had these expectations. Once I eliminated the expectations, and it's taken time, because I wasn't consciously aware. I had all this subconscious programming, so now I'm becoming consciously aware of myself because I had to really look within. I spent a lot of time alone listening to podcasts because I just needed to hear a bunch of different perspectives and I internalize and process everything I'm going through. And as I did that, I started to become, that's my awakening. To define my spiritual awakening was just basically looking at how I had lived my life and how I was playing this victim and was not self-aware, was not making conscious decisions, to now where it's like, okay, I am in control of a lot of things. I can't control getting hit in the face by you. That's just going to happen, but it just happens. I got to roll with the punches, right? You know what I mean? You got to roll with the punches kind of a thing. Yeah. So that's where I'm at in my life now, is it's like, okay, I just have to be intentional on how I live my life and catch myself when I start playing the victim or start becoming complacent. Like you said, I feel like there is no destination. It's a continual progression. And when I personally apply that to my own life becomes exciting because it's like, it doesn't get boring, because it's like, I need to stretch myself. And so now that I'm getting used to it's almost like I'm getting uncomfortable, or I'm getting comfortable being uncomfortable, because I'm putting myself in many situations where, it's not the most comfortable thing. And there is some anxiety, just come in here to do this. I do podcasts all the time. And even when I do my own, there's always that sense of anxiety before, because you're really putting something out. Mm-hmm.
And you don't know where it's going to go.
Because I get vulnerable. I just open up because I want to be very transparent. And, like I said, I've just completely, so many things have shifted in my life. Just the idea, now I'm building relationships with people based on human connection, male and female. I've had these intimate conversations with both sexes, and especially with the opposite sex, where there's no agenda I want to have sex with this person. No, I want to get inside their head. I want to know how they think. I want to know what they do, how they live their life. And then it allows me, because I do want to create a life with a woman. I still have that belief. That's one thing about conservative values. I love the family aspect. I think that is very important in our society. Not only is the family aspect important, but the cultural and the community aspect. And so that's I'm focusing on a lot of things that I was taught in the LDS church. My thing is I'm just not claiming to be anybody that knows anything. I'm not and if we don't vibe, there's no, if somebody was to come on a retreat I did and they didn't vibe and they weren't interested, it's like no big deal. Like we just don't vibe.
Yeah.
But if I meet people and I connect with them and vibe and I can build relationships and network, because the more people you know that are in a similar journey or headspace or just spirituality, like that's what's going to help you thrive in life. You have to surround yourself with people that are going to force you to level up, or they inspire you. You know, when I see somebody I used to be the guy that would see somebody that had something I didn't, and subconsciously, I wouldn't really say it out loud, but in my head, I'm like, fuck this guy. Why does he have that? Why can't I have that? You know, you played this victim mentality, but now I try to consciously and genuinely, when I see like certain people and certain friends like winning, hell yeah.
Yeah, it gets
hell
exciting.
yeah, like because that's the law of attraction. The universal, there's laws of the universe. Whatever religion you subscribe to, there are laws of the universe. And when you are happy with other people's success, you're telling the universe, I deserve success too. I deserve whatever. It doesn't have to be what they actually have, but I deserve good to come into my life. Yes, bad's always going to be there, but it's understanding what the vision is and going forward. And so
I love it, man. It's so cool. I'm excited to see where your journey goes from here and what it creates. Maybe my wife and I'll come on your next retreat.
Yeah.
Maybe.
I kind of this year. So basically, you know, if any of this sounds interesting to you, like I said, connect with me on Instagram and Facebook, listen to my podcast. The next retreat, I'm kind of thinking like doing 4 this year. This was the winter one, do a spring one. I'm wanting to go down south. I want to go skydiving. That's going to be the next
most
physical,
terrifying thing for me, but because I haven't done it, but
and that's kind of would you call it a metaphor? Like getting in the cold water and like I'm just trying to do like different stretches, like physically, mentally, and spiritually, right? And so that's a stretch that scares the shit out of me. Like jumping out of a plane. I can't even imagine how it's going to feel, but for whatever reason, so my cousin does it a lot.
I want to do it, but I just don't want to do it.
Yeah, my cousin does it a lot. He's actually at the point where he's done enough jumps that he's doing it by himself. So he's doing the solo jumps. And so I've been kind of watching him. I'm just like, for whatever reason, it's like, I got to do it, you know? So, I mean, but that's kind of like, and then that's the thing is with these retreats, it's like, you know, with the cold plunge, it wasn't a requirement. I didn't tell anybody. See, here's the thing. I didn't tell anybody they had to do it. It's just like, I'm doing it. And Chase was like, I'm doing it. And then all these other people said, yeah, I'll do it too. But like I said, like there was people that didn't do it, and that's fine. That's the fine. So that's the thing, like the kind of culture I want to create. It's just this idea of like, I'm going to have these stretches for myself. If you want to join me, great. If you don't, like there's not like this requirement, like you have to live a certain way or have a certain standard. It's just like, we're all humans. We all are very, very similar. We're more alike than we are different. We just don't have these kinds of conversations enough because we're scared for whatever reason. Like, oh, I don't want them to know this about me or that about me, or I don't want them to know that I have these weaknesses and insecurities and fears, but we all do.
Sure.
But it's just understanding the balance. And so, yeah, I'm excited. Like I really vision my life. Like the big picture is having like my own facility, like a facility where I have a place to set up my podcast studio. But then it's like a getaway, like a vacation where people, like, it doesn't matter if you're single or a couple or whatever, you can come on this weekend retreat. I imagine it. I love St. George. I've spent a lot of time down there. I love palm trees, the oasis in the desert, having like my own facility where people are coming there. And I just have staff that's like I said, like I'm very fascinated by these women healers. And I see a lot of them that are trying to figure out how to monetize it and how to really, really help people. Like they have this genuine interest to like help people heal, because we are going through, the world is shifting, whether you believe it or not. Like there is an ascension, a conscious ascension happening. A lot of people are waking up in different ways. It doesn't mean that, you know, you and I can have different beliefs on a religious and political level, but we can still
Recognize
rise consciously. Yeah, if you once you start becoming consciously aware, it kind of just separates people too, like because there's just a certain mindset that's breaking free from all this bullshit we've been taught our whole life, with society and just all the mixed, messages, and like people are rising up. And so, but people have had a lot of trauma, and there's a lot of depression in our society, a lot of mental health issues, a lot of uncertainty, fears. And so creating this place where people can come and to have an experience where they just feel love and acceptance, and they can recognize like how identify all these triggers and trauma. But that's the thing is like, I'm not a psychologist. I'm not a counselor. I've thought about, wanting to get into like the coaching space, but I don't even know. I would just rather like manage this facility and have people come in that are experts and good at all that kind of stuff, and just gather people and have conversations with people. And
cool. I love it. We'll see where that happens. And thank you so much for coming on today.
No, thanks for having me on. This was cool.
It's snowing outside.
It's kind of nice to be a guest. I've been, hosting my own for the last 21 episodes. And like I said, I was a guest on 2 that inspired me to just start mine. And that's the thing is, after the second podcast I was on, I asked her some questions, and she said, I was going to start, this was in October. I was like, I'm going to start in January. She's like, buy it now and start now.
Yeah. Why wait?
And I had to make, because if I wouldn't have made that leap, I probably would have, it'd be January right now. I'd probably still be thinking about it. So just because like somebody kind of gave me that little push, I was like, you're right. I'm scared to start this, and I'm kind of procrastinating. It's never going to be the right time. So that was like the perfect time. It was the end of the year, and I had a lot of momentum coming into 2021. And so I appreciate you having me on. This has been
no problem.
Good conversation.
If you want to see when his next retreat is, go have one of those experiences, maybe go skydiving, then go visit him on Facebook or Instagram, Toph Pace, TOPH PACE.
And I'll just I'm going to throw my friend Michaela, like you'll see her tagged in a lot of my posts. She has a page for her astrology called Glow Up Lala. But her name's Michaela Norris, and you can find her, like I said, on my Facebook and Instagram. She's the blonde girl in the black bikini.
And then go listen to his podcast, because again, I've listened to a few episodes, and I think that they're all, you can learn something from everybody, and that's what I like about listening to it. Is it's a normal conversation that you get to hear and hear what people are thinking, because it's about the journey and finding out exactly where you're at in that process. So go check them out there, and we'll catch you guys next time on the Fuel Your Legacy Show.
Thanks for joining us. If what you heard today resonates with you, please like, comment, and share on social media. Tag me, and if you do give me a shout out, I'll give you a shout out on the next episode. Thanks to all of those who've left a review. It helps spread the message of what it takes to build a legacy that lasts. And we'll catch you next time on Fuel Your Legacy.